everyone, and welcome to this exclusive conversation with VR expert and head of business at ShapesXR, Gabriele Romagnoli. My name is Abby Guthkelch, and I'm the global head of executive engagement for Meta's Reality Labs. And I'll be putting the big questions to Gabriele in just a moment. But before I jump in with those questions, I wanted to take a minute to set the stage for our conversation. In the last 18 months, there's been a lot of talk about the metaverse, and especially about what that might mean for the future of work. But today, we're not going to just focus on the future. We're going to talk about a technology that is already changing the way businesses work today. And that technology, of course, is virtual reality. Virtual reality is having a huge impact on the way companies approach creativity and design, helping teams turn bright ideas into best-selling products faster and more efficiently by working together directly in 3D. Now, there's nobody I think could better be placed to tell us about this impact than Gabriele. So let's get into it. Gabriele, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. So now, before I get into questions about VR and the impact of VR, I'd love to take a moment to just introduce us to you, your background, how you got into VR and how you got into ShapesXR.
Well, I mean, I have a different background in a way, come out of tech. So I do have a PhD in biotechnology, work as a scientist and a program manager in a big pharmaceutical company. But I think it was back in 2016, so the first consumer headset hit the market. And that was the moment that I think everything changed to some extent. So people might remember the first experience when they put the headset and maybe they start shooting zombies. What for me stuck was the fact that I could create. I could create in 3D, I could meet with other people. So the first exploration were indeed on that sense. Running workshop with people that were on the other side of the world and be able to connect in a way that would have been impossible just on a Zoom conference. And indeed, that creative effort. So that led me to explore various creative tools, that sculpting, animating, and while entering in this world, I got in contact with the teams, got passionate about what they were doing, and here I am at ShapesXR as head of business.
I love that. Just not a sort of natural sort of like progression that you would imagine, but really driven by the passion that you felt and the sort of change from you experiencing it. That's wonderful. Now, as you say, you've been in the VR landscape or in the VR environments since 2016. But just in the last 5 years, how have you really seen that VR landscape change?
Right. I mean, I think that the first thing that really stick and it's really prominent is the advancement in the technology. So we have moved from something that is heavy, bulky, connected to a powerful PC to something that now you can have on your desk, you can carry around very easily. So, and that is really a major change. I remember still back then that when we were connecting with companies, one of the major obstacles is that, yeah, my headset is in the office, I don't have access to that PC. Now it's completely different. So that's certainly advancement from the hardware perspective. But now also the quality of the apps, and let's be honest, from a wide variety, right? From meeting, collaboration, creation, simulation as well. So I think that also has made big progress, and organization, individuals are getting more and more value out of the shelf without the need to build their own content, their own apps. So that made it much more approachable.
Absolutely. I think the ecosystem of developers and creators is absolutely so important to the future of the technology. So I'm so glad that you talked about that, and the sort of the accessibility, the inclusivity that comes with that. Now, we've just talked about 5 years back, but let's talk about in the present day.
Absolutely.
What excites you most about VR today?
Right. I mean, if I think about that, is the ability to start creating and collaborating. So it is the fact that, and in order to do that, you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to have those years of experience to start creating and sharing your ideas. So this, of course, opens a lot of opportunity for a talent pool that maybe doesn't have access to those, for example, 3D skills. And one reason for that is because when ideas are generated, when you share those ideas on a flat screen, it's different. It's not like if we would see, because this is what would happen. If we would wear a headset, we would actually be able to see and create this idea with our own hands, and your brain thinks differently. I can guarantee you that when you are in this environment, you start thinking about problems, you see opportunities in a way that would be impossible on a flat screen. And you also get different inputs from the people around you that are in that space. So I think that this power to create and collaborate made more accessible thanks to our technology and a series of apps that are enabling that. It's certainly what makes me more excited.
I love that. Now, you mentioned it when you were giving your sort of background and how you got into VR as sort of like, it was around this sort of like gaming stage. And one thing that we hear quite a lot of is that, VR is just for gaming, or it's only for the younger generation in the workforce that are interested in it, or, it's just a passing fad. Why would I bother investing in this technology? It's not going to be around for long enough. What are the biggest myths that you hear that we need to overcome, or we need to get past, a myth bust when it comes to VR for work?
Well, so the first thing probably is more of a let's take out this idea that VR makes you sick. Because, I can guarantee you that if someone puts you on a roller coaster as your first VR experience, then, yeah, you might get sick. The point is that VR for work is not about roller coaster. And it's about steady, reliable experience. So this is one first thing. And also because the technology has evolved so much, and the first experience that people might have was with literally a phone strapped to their face. We are not there. We are not there yet anymore. We are way farther than that. So that is one thing that I want to state. If we are looking at I wouldn't say more of a myth, but probably when you ask about something, it's more of a change of mindset in a way. So when we think about VR, very often people, companies think about an immediate, like a one-to-one reproduction of reality, right? Like stepping in and I'm in a different world, but I can do the same thing, I can see the same exact thing. And that I believe is not necessarily where the whole value of this technology lies. Certainly there is. There are simulations that do a great job at doing and replicating reality for training, but there is another full spectrum that people are not aware yet in some cases, and that is this ability indeed to use it to start creating, to start ideating, to sketch, like if you would with, for example, a bunch of Lego blocks or maybe some cardboard that you stick together, because there is still incredible value in the ideas that come out of it, in the communication that happens around them. So one myth, it's more about let's just start thinking about VR not just as a perfect final product that I can use and experience, but other as a tool, as a creative tool, as I would use pen and paper, Post-it, or a bunch of Lego blocks.
So just leading on from that, why do you believe there's such an opportunity for organisations to change or transform the way that they are approaching creativity and design? Why is VR the right technology to help them to do that?
Right. So, first of all, I wouldn't speak necessarily about change. I would see it more as complement, right? Because there is really an opportunity to bring some of the workflows that already rely, for example, on 3D tools or 3D assets that companies already have available, but then easily bring them in space. And as such, VR, and now we're talking about virtual reality, it's not just about VR, it's also about mixed reality. It's also about seeing that same content in context within a certain space. And something that any 2D screen cannot provide, right? So the fact that this is becoming and is so accessible, that's just why it unlocks so many opportunities that otherwise just ideating, thinking, sharing on a flat screen would just be impossible.
I really appreciate the fact that you sort of like said it's not a this or that.
Exactly.
It absolutely is about really understanding what's right for the right sort of design for the right output that we're doing, but also absolutely when it comes to mixed reality. And I know we spoke earlier about the fact that when I had my first Pro headset on, and I jumped into a ShapesXR demo and had that mixed reality between, being able to see the 3D design in front of me in situ in space, and then be able to sort of like fully teleport actually into it, and then, have it all around me, which was just like that was my wow moment within the...
Absolutely, absolutely. And this brings back to that idea that you don't need necessarily that 100% visual fidelity to get value, to get impressed. Because when you're bringing in and you're presenting something like that in a completely different way, more immersive way, that's just the value in itself. And then, of course, there is value from a production in terms of efficiency, but that has a huge value and a huge impact.
Fantastic. Now, I just mentioned ShapesXR, obviously, the platform that you work for. So I'm just going to quickly turn my attention to that. And there may be some people that are watching today who might not be familiar with ShapesXR. So could you just give us a quick elevator pitch on what the platform is about?
Absolutely. So Shapes is a tool that unlocks 3D creation and collaboration for teams. So, and unlike other creator tools, what it does is that it has a storytelling features, let's call it, like a PowerPoint. So instead of just seeing static environments around you, you can tell story, for example, about a product function, about how a user interact, about like maybe a venue looks like. Mm-hmm. So instead of just relying on something that is static, that you would create on a standard software, you can tell story and turn a storyboard into an immersive presentation. So, and I mean, I think sometimes it's hard to grasp. Mm-hmm. So maybe an example I could make, for example, to give people a more vivid idea. So some of our users from the automotive industry are thinking of how the future of for example, autonomous car is going to look like, how electric cars are going to be charged, or how do they communicate with the driver, right? And those, at the end, are stories. Stories of human interacting with machine, interacting with the space around them. And instead of building just a storyboard or maybe sketching it, they can build a whole story at scale, and like you did, click and then be immersed in that space, invite other people, share ideas, and ultimately get something that they can, if they want, export, for example, to a game engine to bring further in the development, or maybe make images out of it. So it is about the ability to create in 3D and then bring that story that is just static to life in form of a story, user flow, user journey, or user interactions.
I love that. So it is the end sort of product, as in being able to immerse someone inside it to tell that story, but also up till that point to have that 3D collaboration in design as well. Now, getting on to some specifics and numbers, and obviously, as I said, there's lots of people out there sort of with these myths around, well, should I go into VR yet? Is this the right thing for me? So ROI, return on investment, is really, really key. How can companies really quantify the ROI of using VR within creativity and design?
Yeah. So I think one of the best example that we have was the great work that the Logitech team has done. Mm-hmm. Maybe sharing a little story. So they were commissioned by their internal gaming department to design a venue for the launch of a new line of product. And they just had 3 weeks to come up from mood boarding, design, and actually creating the final space that then would be given to contractors to do the costing of the whole event. So what they did is that despite they were fully 3D capable, have game engine expertise, they decided to do that in Shapes because that allowed them to iterate much faster, because they got their marketing team in reviews, so they were basically able to run iteration 4 times faster than what they would do.
Wow.
So instead of meeting once a week, because that's when they had the output, they were able to meet 3 to 4 times a week for maybe 15 minutes in space and get immediate feedback from the marketing team. And lastly, of course, what they wanted to do, they wanted to share that also with people that maybe didn't have a headset, right?
Yep.
That makes sort of sense. So what they did is that they were able to export what was created in Shapes one-on-one, add some light effects, smoke, and maybe some rendering in Unity, and share it with their other stakeholders.
Yeah.
In that case, that was twice as fast because they already have everything built at scale in the right relationship, with the right storyline already built in Shapes. So these are just some examples.
Yeah, and I love it. And also, I think it's important to really hone in on the fact that we are talking about 3D design and creativity, but we're not just talking about designers using it.
So this is one point. So, and that's what's kind of like a bit striking. So in their case, they decided to go for it even though they had the 3D skills. So they had the capability. Of course, other people were involved, being there, the people from the marketing team. True. There is another great value that similar things could be done and can be done and are done in Shapes from people that do not have 3D skills.
Yeah.
And this is something that is very hard to attach an ROI to it. I have another story, for example. So an employee from La Poste, the French postal system, different example, but what they did, there was dispatching center for the packages. And he's not 3D equipped, but what he did is that he was able to recreate in Shapes the layout, starting just from a floor plan, invite people and says, look, how do we make the flow? Where do we make the benches? Why couldn't we move it there other than moving it in another place? If that happens, how does the package then flow within it? And why do it in Shapes? Because it's accessible and because I can tell a story about what happens within it.
Absolutely. It's just such a good example. Now, before we come on to sort of like looking in the future and where this could potentially go to, wider application, right? At the moment, sort of VR is used, not wall-to-wall in companies, not through every single department, not through every single business at the moment. But what do you think it's going to take to get VR to have this wider application, wider take-up within a work context, and how close are we to achieving it?
Right. So I think that there are many factors. Certainly, technology, like the hardware itself, it's getting lighter and lighter. And more comfortable. Mixed reality, it is already making a big difference because it's unlocking a lot of use cases for the real world. For VR, people put on the headset and they feel isolated, right? You feel disconnected. And sometimes, and this is not the case anymore when you are in mixed reality because you can see your surrounding. And that makes that less, let's say, you feel less scared in a way, intimidated,
claustrophobic as well. Yeah,
exactly. But then unlock also something because all the digital content that we create could be positioned in space. So that's from a hardware perspective. I think we are already there with the Quest Pro, and it's just going to get better. When we look at, of course, apps and content, they need to grow, and they need also the input from enterprises, from companies to grow in the right direction. Yeah. That is also like very important. So we personally at Shapes, we work very closely with our clients to just learn and teach and educate. Yeah. So that is very, very important because we see a lot of opportunities, especially for a tool that is so horizontal like ours. As I was saying, automotive, event design, or product design, or process. So we are there to learn and to educate our clients with it. There is one thing that is also very important, and that is also the underlying infrastructure. So when we think about, for example, rolling out several headsets, I think the Quest for Business is going to play a key role. And that's why it's also very important that is, for example, roll out not just in the US, but also here in Europe so that companies can, as fast as possible, get to explore and use this for in a way that is more streamlined, right? That doesn't requires to fiddle with headset, with permissions. So that is certainly very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think device management and, as you say, the sort of infrastructure that sits behind it is critical for being able to hit that sort of more mass rollout, should we say, Absolutely. Within organisations. I've just checked the clock and I can't believe how quickly time is flying.
Oh, we are out of time?
Not yet, but we're getting there.
Okay. So
thankfully, I've got some time left.
Okay, go ahead.
Perfect. So I would like to pivot a little bit into thinking more about like where the future is going with VR. But just kind of like looking at sort of any insights that you have for business leaders? I know you have a lot of conversations with different leaders, different organizations, and you've seen the transformational impact that VR can have within business. So what are the 3 key insights or advice that you would give to business leaders that they need to know about VR?
Right. So one thing that is that I think is very important is that mixed reality is going to unlock a brand new, it's unlocking a brand new way of using this technology and bringing value to the space, right? So it is not, again, just claustrophobic, it's not just being there and being disconnected from the world. So that is something that is unlocking so many opportunity, especially from the side of creativity and design, because seeing an object in context, it's incredibly valuable. Another key insight is that while it is very, very important to think about how you can make things faster, it's also very important to think, what can you do that you wouldn't be able of doing?
Yeah.
Right? So when I spoke specifically about that example from La Poste, that is exactly an example. Like someone without 3D experience then can be equipped with new skills. And that is something that I think is critical, and it has a big impact on how people approach the technology, but provide value to the business. So, absolutely. And the other is, creative process right now is happening on a flat screen.
Yeah.
Our world is not flat, right? I mean, if, again, and I'm bringing that up again, but if ideas are made with cardboard, with clay, with Lego blocks, going to a space and not behind a screen, there is a reason. Our brain works differently. So I think that, especially when thinking about creativity and collaboration, I think it's very, very important to just think about that potential. I do have one more, actually, if you allow me. And that is the collaboration aspect. We live in a world that is more and more distributed, for example. So, and I mean, being able to feel connected in a way that you couldn't just behind a screen, right? It is completely different. It is another world. So you can connect, you can create, and it's not just to have a meeting, but to be productive.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, something that is also very, 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 very important, and something that people maybe dismiss.
Couldn't agree more. So, thinking about those business leaders that we've just given these insights to, what is the first step? What should they be doing to get into VR?
I think that maybe I can share another story, right?
Stories are perfect. We love a good story.
I was actually like a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham at the R&D center at Mondelez. So it's the company behind Toblerone, Oreo, and they have launched a whole initiative to explore how immersive technology could help. So the way it was done is that get a core group that had the responsibility to explore other apps and see what is available out of the shelf. This is one thing. So people think that they need to develop their own content. That is not true, right? So in this case, for example, we were one of the apps invited, and what we did is like, well, how can, for example, product be visualized on a shelf? How does a consumer snacks during the day? You can tell a different story that is not just behind the PowerPoint slides. Or how does a premium pack of Oreo maybe gets opened up, right? And those are all use cases that's being explored, that we are actively exploring together to see how the whole organization could benefit. So what's the first step? Get some people in that knows how this technology works already, scout and see what are the apps that out of the shelf could benefit your organization. And from there, running a small lab, it's probably the first step.
Perfect. Love a good story. So never shy away from stories here. My last question to you. I'm going to give you a crystal ball to look into the future. So gaze into your crystal ball. What does enterprise VR look like in 2, 5, 10 years' time?
Right. So I think that if we look at vision, there are going to be glasses on our desk and lighter. And especially in enterprises, we will have already seen the value of running those interactions in a mixed reality environment, in a virtual reality environment. And along with that, there are going to be ecosystems where you can move from one app that has provided value to another. So we will just create new workflow, a new way to create, collaborate, have fun, also while we are at work, meditate for our own wellness. So I think they are just gonna be on our desk, and we will find like more and more ways, because content is gonna get better, and the workforce is gonna benefit, and the organization is certainly gonna benefit.
Fantastic. I think I couldn't agree with you more. Interoperability is absolutely key to where the future is going to come, and form factor 100% is.
Yes.
Gabriele, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Sadly, we are out of time. I can't believe how time flies so fast in this place. But just an enormous thank you so much for all the insights, for the great stories that you've shared on what the impact VR is having in business today and where it can extend to the future. And thank you to everyone who's taken time to listen in today. I hope we have inspired you to want to explore more about what VR can do for work. If you want to know more about VR for work, do head over to forwork.meta.com, where you can check out our range of Meta Quest VR headsets, learn more about VR solutions, or easily schedule a call with one of our experts. And if you want to learn more about ShapesXR and what Gabriele and the team are working on, just head to shapesxr.com. That's all from us this time. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again, Gabriele. We'll see you next time.